taken off from New York's LaGuardia Airport, heading to Charlotte. It was only in the air 6 minutes. Emergency crews raced to make sure everyone got out of the plane before it sank.
Through some of the details about this plane, where it crashed, and what we know about exactly how it went down. First of all, here's a picture of what this Airbus A320 looks like. You can see it is a twin-engine plane. There's about 2,000 of these aircraft in service, so a pretty typical plane. It's very similar to a 737 as well. It typically has about 150 passengers on board as a maximum capacity, so that was a pretty full flight, since we know there are about 146 passengers aboard. Here's what those passengers saw while they were on board. You can see the key characteristic that I wanted to show you here. This is a single aisle aircraft. Even though there's a lot of passengers on board this aircraft, there's only one aisle right down the middle of the aircraft, and so all of those passengers, as they evacuated, would have had to go out this aisle and then down those emergency exits. Now, I want to show you this as well. This is one of those live flight trackers that you can find on the internet. And I want to show you this because this confirms for us, in fact, that it did take off at 3:26 p.m. and it was only in the air for 6 minutes, reaching a maximum altitude of about 3,400 feet. As you can see, here's this little map up here. It shows it took off from LaGuardia. It went northbound, and I want to zoom in on this for us here, too. This is, of course, Google Earth. Whoops, let's do this. Google Earth shows us here as we zoom in here on LaGuardia and where this plane went down. Right over here, you can see this is LaGuardia Airport. You can see this little white line here. This is the runway that it took off on, going northeast. It's circled, if you can follow a little hand there, the mouse hand. It circled to the north and started heading southbound when it encountered right around somewhere in here that flock of geese, lost both of its engines, and then the pilot had to make a crucial decision. He decided at that point, no power, no lift, had to ditch that aircraft right into the frigid Hudson River. As Charlie told us earlier, the water temperature here in the Hudson River, just 32 degrees. The air temperature, 18 degrees. Obviously, at those water temperatures, hypothermia sets in very, very quickly. So as I think you've probably heard more than once today, but it bears repeating. Miraculous that at this point it appears as if everybody got out safely from this plane crash. Sounds like we're going to hear from the pilot and Mayor Bloomberg coming up very shortly. But that's the latest here, giving people an idea of where this plane went down live at the Net Tracker. I'm Greg Lagerquist. Let's send it back to you, Jeff.
As they arrived on solid ground, they had stories of their terrifying ordeal. The FAA confirms all 148 passengers and the entire flight crew got off the plane safely. The plane hit the frigid waters near Midtown Manhattan.
Nearby ferries rushed to the scene to help the survivors. They were brought to hospitals in New York and New Jersey.
The plane went down. I don't know what happened. There was an explosion on the plane, and we had to make an emergency landing in the water. They did a phenomenal job getting everybody out.
Hundreds watched the plane go down from their office windows, including Joyce Cordero, a 60 Minutes producer.
It was almost right in the water, so it was at the point where it came right in, and then it seemed to float for a while.
The flight had just taken off from New York's LaGuardia Airport headed to Charlotte. It was only in the air 3 minutes. Emergency crews raced to make sure everyone got out of the plane before it sank, which it did. As daylight dwindled, Flight 1549 was slowly disappearing from view.
And you are looking at live pictures of LaGuardia Airport. That is the U.S. Airways terminal where Flight 1549 originated, as it was supposed to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then on to Seattle, Washington. Again, the plane crashed into the Hudson River behind me, and you can see those flashing lights back there. Those are the ambulance, the emergency workers, the fire trucks, the police, and that is also an area where many of the survivors were taken. They were taken over to New Jersey and taken to hospitals, checked for hypothermia and other injuries. Again, we are live here in New York. Drew Levinson, now back to you.
All right, we're watching live reports there from New York City. You can tell just by looking at Drew Levinson just how cold and windy it has been down in New York City as well today. Of course, we'll have more in our forecast in a moment. But first, an accident like this can certainly shake the nerves of travelers, and they're being shaken today. News 13's Aaron O'Valley is live at the Jetport right now, getting reaction from folks there. Aaron, what are you hearing?
Greg, absolutely. People in absolute awe, glued to the television, seeing this miraculous emergency landing, looking at these pictures of people sitting on the plane and the wings as they try to get to safety. Emergency crews trying to get everybody out safely, and thankfully everyone seems to be okay right now. As you can imagine, people here at the Jetport about to board their planes, shaken up, those waiting for loved ones. Even though it wasn't that particular plane from LaGuardia to Charlotte, it can happen to anybody. But a lot of people here saying that they are thankful for this miraculous outcome.
You know, you worry about it. Well, I don't really worry about it because, you know, when your number's up, that's what's going to happen. But it doesn't do any good to worry about it.
It's, you know, the plane lurches every now and then. It gives you the fear. So I'm sure they're scared, but apparently everybody's okay, so that's a good thing.
And a lot of people saying this was a perfect emergency landing if there is such a thing. And I have to tell you, our hearts out here in this freezing cold weather goes out to all of those people who got off that plane and had to possibly get into the water for safety. Greg, will send it back to you.
Crashed into the Hudson River. A U.S. Airways plane crashed after a flock of birds reportedly flew into the engines, disabling both of those engines, although we did just learn in the last 20 minutes or so that federal investigators are expected to be there on the scene in about an hour or so. And, of course, they will determine the exact cause of this flight being forced to ditch into the river. Flight 1549 took a controlled dive into the Hudson after the pilot realized there really was nowhere else to land. This flight, again, from LaGuardia, heading down to Charlotte. The FAA reports that all passengers and crew, more than 150 people, were safely taken off the plane. It does not appear to be terrorist-related. We also have some other breaking news.